Clearly not going to answer that question, so let me get on to,
Would you like to?
I do have
I'd love to
questions for
respond.
the second round.
You'll have a second round. Would you like to speak before I call on Senator Cruz?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Bondi, welcome. Thank you for
Thank you.
your long career in public service, and thank you for your willingness to take on this incredibly important office. You know, I have to say, I don't know that there is a more important position in this new administration than the position to which you have been nominated, Attorney General of the United States. I thought the exchange just a moment ago with Senator Hirono was illustrative. She asked you how you would respond if the president asked you to target his political enemies. It's rather striking because it's not a hypothetical. It has happened over the last 4 years. And I think perhaps the most tragic legacy of the Biden-Harris administration has been the politicization and the weaponization of the United States Department of Justice. And we don't need to ask hypothetically because Joe Biden publicly mused and allowed the New York Times to report it, calling on Merrick Garland, why will he not prosecute Trump more quickly? And Merrick Garland, sadly, he sat in that chair and promised to be apolitical, and he broke that promise almost the instant he walked into the Department of Justice. If you look on the west pediment of the Supreme Court of the United States, just above the entrance, there's a simple yet profound four-word phrase, equal justice under law. We have seen over the last 4 years a Department of Justice that systematically targeted the political opponents of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and that systematically protected his friends and allies. And it is tragic to see the loss of confidence in the American people, in the Department of Justice, and in the FBI. I would note, I don't think there's an institution in America who has lost more respect from the American people than the FBI has in the last 4 years. That is a grotesque violation of the obligation of the Department of Justice and the FBI. So I want to start with just a very simple question. If you are confirmed as Attorney General, will you pledge to fairly and faithfully uphold the law regardless of party?
So help me God.
Amen. Look, and I want to be clear for folks at home. I don't want a Republican Department of Justice. I don't want a Democrat Department of Justice. I want a Department of Justice that follows the damn law. And I think the American people do too. That shouldn't be too much to expect. Now, I'm grateful to President Trump for nominating you. I think on any objective level, you're clearly qualified for this position. You have been a prosecutor for decades. You have been the elected Attorney General of the state of Florida, the third largest state in America, for 8 years. Let me ask you, in terms of your practice, how many criminal cases over the course of your career have you personally handled?
Handled thousands.
How many of those were before a jury?
Hundreds. I don't want to overstate, but hundreds. I was in a courtroom for many years. I tried 4 when I was an intern, jury trials. I think you had to try at least 20 in misdemeanor before you went to felony. Then you were in court every day, and I was also lead trial attorney for many years trying many cases. So.
And how many of those cases would have been before a judge?
Oh, hundreds and hundreds as well, but hundreds before a jury, I would assume.
And as Attorney General of Florida, how many lawyers did you supervise roughly?
Approximately 400, Senator.
Now, I also want to clarify something. During the course of this hearing, several Democrat senators have referred to you as President Trump's, quote, personal lawyer. Now, I don't believe that is an accurate characterization. As I understand it, you represented President Trump as a White House special advisor during his first impeachment trial. Is that correct?
Within Office of White House Counsel, yes, Senator.
And is working within the White House counsel's office different than representing Donald J. Trump individually as his personal lawyer?
Absolutely.
How's it different?
You're working for the government. You're working for the Office of White House Counsel. You're not representing him in his personal capacity.
And so you have not represented him in his business affairs, in his personal life, or in any of the criminal trials he has faced?
No, Senator.
And you know, when it comes to weaponization, it's worth noting that in more than 2 centuries of our nation's history, no president had previously been indicted, no president had previously been prosecuted until the Biden-Harris White House came along. And in the last 4 years, we've seen Donald Trump indicted and prosecuted not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 separate times.
And 2 assassination attempts, Senator.
I have to say, Javert from Les Mis would be chagrined at the efforts of Democrats to do anything possible to take him down. And I believe the real target in this was not President Trump, but it was the American people, that these prosecutions were brought because partisan prosecutors were terrified that the American people would do exactly what they did in November of 2024 and vote to reelect Donald J. Trump.
By 77.3%. Million Americans, 77.3 million Americans.
Will you commit every day as Attorney General to follow the law, to follow the Constitution, to uphold the rule of law without favor and without regard to the partisan position of any criminal defendant?
Yes, Senator.
That's what we should all expect from an Attorney General. Thank you.
We'll now recess for 30-minute lunch break. That means we'll be back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Bondi, I congratulate you on an excellent job at this hearing. And I want to go back to the topic you and I discussed before, which is the politicization of the Department of Justice. I want to focus on a different aspect of it. We talked about the Department of Justice under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris being used to target the president's political enemies. We talked about it being used to protect the political friends and allies of the White House. But there's another aspect of politicization and lawlessness, and that is refusing to follow the law, utterly defying federal statutory law. And I think there's no area where this has been more egregious than as it concerns our immigration laws. We have had 4 years of a wide-open southern border. My state, Texas, has borne a disproportionate burden as a consequence of that, as 12 million illegal aliens have flooded into this country. And what the Biden administration has done, no other president in the history of America has done. The Biden administration has simply ignored the law, and when illegal aliens are apprehended, they release them. Federal law says they shall be detained, says they shall be deported. And frankly, our constitutional system is not meant to deal with a president who defies the law. Article 2 says the president shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. This administration utterly defied the law. I have said somewhat tongue-in-cheek, Joe Biden did something I previously thought was impossible. He made me miss Barack Obama. Because Barack Obama, for all my disagreements with him, when it came to illegal immigration, he by and large followed the law. Barack Obama deported millions of people. The left got mad at him and called him the deporter-in-chief. No administration has ever done what this administration has done, which has said, we are going to facilitate the invasion of this country. We're going to release 12 million people, and we are going to see Americans murdered, women raped, children abused and murdered. We're going to see drugs flood into this country, fentanyl flood into this country. And so I want to ask you several things on this. First of all, in your experience, what are the consequences of open borders, and who pays the price when illegal immigrants, and in particular violent criminal illegal immigrants, are released into the country?
American citizens, Senator, And I think I know they're paying the price every single day. We're seeing it, we're watching it. We've talked about Lake and Riley, of course, multiple times, but there are multiple victims, violent crime in all of our states. And as we say now, every state is a border state. I was at the border, not in your state, but in Yuma, Arizona, several months ago, and I saw firsthand, the Border Patrol agents and Customs showed us IDs and driver's license, Venezuela, from all of these countries, IDs just thrown on the ground, and people were allowed to walk freely into our country. Senator, I never knew the definition of a disposable child. I never heard that term in my entire career until I was there. A disposable child, the agents kept recognizing a little boy coming over and over. You're familiar with it, I'm sure. Same little boy.
And let me ask, just because
and he had been trafficked.
Let me ask, because my time has expired and the issue you're raising is so incredibly important. One statistic that every American should know is the number 300,000. There are over 300,000 children that this administration has lost. Little girls and little boys who came here unaccompanied were in this administration's custody. They handed them over to adults, many of them not blood relatives, and they don't know where they are. I've never seen a single Democrat in this committee ask one question about the 300,000 children. I want to ask you a commitment. Will you, as Attorney General, investigate and make every effort to find those children, and if they are subject to abuse, get them out of those abusive situations that the federal government has put them into?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator Padilla.
Thank you.
Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I got to say, boy, that sounds good, Mr. Chairman.
That isn't as good as it sounds to me, Senator. Thank you.
Well, congratulations, and I'm looking forward to the next 2 years working together.
Thank you.
And to Senator Rubio, let me say congratulations to you as well. We're going to miss you on this committee. We're going to miss you in the Senate, but you're going to do an extraordinary job at Foggy Bottom, and I will say if they capture you and tie you up in the basement, we will send a team to pull you out. You know, as I look back over the last 4 years of the Biden-Harris administration, there are a lot of policies that have done a lot of damage. Domestic policies, economic policies, but I think all of those pale compared to the damage that has been done to national security and foreign policy over the last 4 years. Over the last 4 years, this administration has systematically undermined and abandoned our allies, and it has systematically shown weakness and appeasement to our enemies. And the consequence has been disastrous. We've gone from 4 years ago, peace and prosperity, to today, a situation with wars across the globe and every enemy of America stronger than they were when this administration came into office. I am confident the incoming administration is going to change that direction. I am confident that President Trump and the White House and you as Secretary of State are going to shift us back to where we should be, which is standing by our friends and allies and standing up to our enemies. Do you agree with that assessment? Is that what you intend to do as Secretary of State?
Well, let me say first, the foreign policy of the United States will be set by the President, and my job is to advise on it and ultimately to execute. I think the President has been abundantly clear, and that is his policy is going to be driven about making America safer, stronger, and more prosperous. As I said in my opening statement, everything the State Department does, every policy, every program, every dollar it spends, every initiative it takes has to answer 3 questions. Does it make us safer? Does it make us stronger? Or does it make us more prosperous? And if it doesn't, if the answer is not yes to one of those 3, you're going to have a hard time moving that forward, because that's the priority that the President, and that's the priority that, by the way, voters gave this President when they elected him. You point to a number of things that I think are critically important, and let me, I'll phrase it a different way, but I think we're saying the same thing. We have lost deterrence in multiple theaters around the world. So as an example, and I use this as a small-scale example, but it's really an important one. I think of the year was 2019, the Wagner Group tried to get cute and came after some of Americans operating in Syria. And fire from the sky rained down on them. And that group was pushed back pretty hard. That's deterrence. They threatened us, and they knew what the response would be. I recall the consternation here and in other places when Soleimani met his demise. But I can tell you it impacted Iranian behavior for a substantial period of time. No matter how tough they talked, it impacted their behavior. I think it's important to reestablish deterrence. And to the extent that that's been lost for a variety of reasons, the lack of deterrence is an invitation to war. The lack of deterrence is an invitation to hostility. It prevents the very thing that we hope to achieve, which is peace and stability in the world. And I do think we've lost deterrence. And I think in some ways it contributed to what happened in Ukraine. An item I know is very close to you and you've worked very on, and we talked earlier today about, is energy dependence. I recall President Trump at both a NATO summit and at the United Nations, and I recall the United Nations one in particular, President Trump said Germany is dependent, entirely going to be left dependent on China, on Russia for its energy. And they laughed at him. There were diplomats in the hall that were snickering. That's exactly what happened. It is one of the reasons why Putin believed he could invade Europe, is because Europe would not push back because they depended on him so much for energy. Now, Europe is to be congratulated. They have moved very swiftly, particularly the Germans, to diversify their energy resources. But one could argue that we may never have had that invasion had that dependence not existed, because maybe who would have thought the European response would have been more forceful than he anticipated. So I do think reestablishing deterrence and strength is important, because it prevents war and it gives us leverage in diplomacy, where we hope to solve 99.9% of the global disagreements we hope to solve through diplomacy, not through armed conflict.
I think that's very well said.
Senator Cruz, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congresswoman, congratulations on your nomination. You're going to be terrific. I want to go back to a topic you discussed with Senator Cornyn. I want to focus on Iran's push to build a nuclear arsenal, which poses, I think, the most immediate and acute threat to American national security. When the Ayatollah chants death to America, he means it. And I believe he would absolutely detonate a nuclear weapon over an American city if he could. The Trump administration got Iran's nuclear program in a box and kept it there. President Trump withdrew from the catastrophic Obama-Iran nuclear deal in 2018. He imposed maximum pressure in 2019. He invoked the UN snapback mechanism in the UN Security Council, Resolution 2231, to reimpose international sanctions in 2020. For that entire time, Iran was deterred from making significant advances on their nuclear program. They did not even enrich uranium above 5% or cascade advanced centrifuges. Starting in November 2020, the Iranian regime gambled that it could start rushing to a nuclear arsenal, and the incoming Biden administration would let them. Unfortunately, that proved correct. In November, the regime approved a new law calling for major nuclear advances. In January, they started enriching at 20% at Fordo, the underground enrichment bunker built into a mountain that the Obama-Iran nuclear deal left open. The incoming Biden administration responded with appeasement. In February, immediately after being inaugurated, they rushed to the UN to rescind President Trump's snapback, again allowing international sanctions to expire. For the next 4 years, the administration continually dismantled pressure on the regime and refused to impose sanctions. We know the result. Today, the Ayatollah has achieved a nuclear breakout time of 0. We now face the very real possibility of an Iranian nuclear arsenal. I do not believe that this is a threat the U.S. can tolerate, and I'm confident that both the President and Secretary of State Rubio agree. I asked Secretary of State Rubio whether he intends to go to the United Nations and again trigger the snapback mechanism as a part of his written testimony to this committee. Here was Secretary Rubio's response, quote, "I believe it is in our national security interest for the UN Security Council to snap back the sanctions that were suspended under the JCPOA. I will execute the President's guidance and work with our allies to ensure that snapback takes place." First, do you agree with Secretary Rubio's assessment that it is in the national security interest of the United States to snap back those sanctions?
Yes.
Talk about how you would execute a strategy to do so, either unilaterally or working with allies.
We will have to, that will be a strategy that I develop with the National Security Council in tandem with Secretary Rubio and President Trump to work with our allies within the United Nations, within the Security Council, and there are allies that are already considering this and looking at it, and that has been publicly reported. But obviously, pushing back on Iran is a top priority. It was a success during President Trump's first term, and we've seen the catastrophic results in loss of life during the previous 4 years when you have had an emboldened Iran that has led to directly the October 7th terrorist attack against Israel and Hezbollah firing tens of thousands of rockets against Israeli civilians.
Let's move to another topic. You and I talked about the deep rot in the United Nations when it comes to supporting terrorism against America and our allies, especially Israel. As you discussed with Senator McCormick, UNRWA has for decades provided material support for Hamas and other terrorist groups in Gaza. The World Health Organization has also been deeply complicit in the use of hospitals by Hamas for terrorist activities, including for the holding of hostages. The complicity of these organizations deepened after October 7th. The Biden administration embraced UNRWA and the World Health Organization. Congress prohibited the Biden administration from funding UNRWA, but the administration officials circumvented that prohibition by using UNRWA infrastructure. Yesterday, the president rightly and immediately withdrew our participation from them. I think that was a critical first step, but the next step is to enable American citizens to hold these organizations accountable. We currently have a very odd legal environment where these organizations enjoy more sovereign immunity than states, and thus are shielded from accountability. Last Congress, I introduced the Liable Act and was joined by 4 current members of this committee, including, as well as, Secretary of State Rubio. The bill will allow American victims of terrorism and their family to sue international organizations that support terrorism against this. I will soon reintroduce it in this Congress. What is your understanding of the role these organizations have played in facilitating terrorism against Americans, Israelis, and our allies?
Well, UNRWA, there were individuals in UNRWA who participated, who executed and committed terrorist acts against Israel on October 7th. Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, carried an UNRWA passport. You had a Hamas data center under UNRWA headquarters. So the rot is deep. Congress made the right decision. I was proud to be one of the leaders when it came to defunding UNRWA. And I am committed to holding them accountable and working with the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House and the President if that legislation passes.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cruz.
Boatsman, thank you, Ranking Member Klobuchar, members of the committee. Let me start by saying what Senator Cornyn said a minute ago is absolutely right. This is a no-brainer. Brooke Rollins as a nominee to be Secretary of Agriculture is an extraordinary choice. And I have absolute confidence that every member of this committee is going to be very, very happy working with her in that role in the next 4 years. I've been friends with Brooke for over 2 decades, from when she was policy director for then Governor Rick Perry to when she led the Texas Public Policy Foundation, which became the preeminent free market state foundation in the country, to when she came to Washington to join President Trump to lead the Domestic Policy Council, to her more recent years leading the America First Policy Institute. At every stage, she's proven herself to be a leader. She's proven herself to be an innovative policy thinker. And she's proven herself able to bring people together to accomplish major objectives. All of those skills will serve her and the farmers and ranchers of America exceptionally well. To know Brooke is to know she's an Aggie. And all Aggies are members of a cult, which I say from a place of deep love. But I am convinced if you were to cut Brooke's hand right here, it would not bleed red, but it would bleed maroon onto this table. She brings that ferocity to everything she does. She brings creativity. She brings joy. Brooke is always smiling. And she's smiling because she has a vision of where to take us. She grew up in a small agricultural community, Glen Rose, Texas. Her summers were spent at her family's Minnesota farm, helping with the corn, potato, and soybean crops. And I have to say, Brooke, the level of foresight to kiss up to the ranking member as a young child is impressive. Her experiences in barrel racing, and by the way, for everyone who knows barrel racers, yes, they're crazy, and raising livestock for 4-H and Future Farmers of America installed in her a profound appreciation for the challenges and rewards of life in agriculture. Farmers and ranchers in America right now are facing extraordinary challenges. Challenges that are putting their livelihood at risk, putting their families at risk, putting the ability to provide food and fiber and clothing for the American people at genuine risk. The farmers and ranchers of this nation, the farmers and ranchers in the great state of Texas, are looking to this committee for leadership. And they're looking to the next Secretary of Agriculture for leadership. In Texas and South Texas, we face historic droughts, and yet our neighbor, the nation of Mexico, is in brazen violation of the 1944 water treaty that obligates it to provide water each year to the people of South Texas. I have no doubt that soon-to-be Secretary Rollins will be a ferocious advocate for those South Texas farmers, just as she is a ferocious advocate for farmers and ranchers in every one of your states and all across the country. She's going to be an extraordinary and even an historic Secretary of Agriculture. And I'm proud to join John Cornyn in supporting my friend Brooke Rollins, and I encourage you to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, welcome. Let me first of all say thank you. Thank you for saying yes when President Trump asked you to serve in this role. I think there are very few roles in all of government that are more important than Director of the FBI, and there are very few roles in all of government that are more in need of a fundamental change. You and I have both spent much of our adult lives working in and around law enforcement. And the loss of respect from the American people of the FBI and of the Department of Justice is one of the most tragic developments of the last 4 years. Both the Department of Justice and the FBI have a long history of being apolitical, outside of politics, of being faithful to and focused on upholding the rule of law and keeping the American people safe. And in many ways, the worst legacy, in my opinion, of the Biden administration was the complete politicization and weaponization of both the Department of Justice and the FBI, turning them into tools to attack the perceived enemies of the Biden White House. Now, you have been charged with going in and restoring integrity of the FBI. That is not going to be an easy task. But before you can carry out that task, and I am confident you will be confirmed and you will be in the position to carry out that task, you've got to make it through the gauntlet of the Senate Judiciary Committee and my colleagues on the Democrat side of the aisle, who I don't know how many spots on Senator Tillis's bingo card have been filled, but it looks like he's playing blackout and they're all filled right now. But you will be and have been accused of just about everything they can. But I want to focus on what several Democrats have done recently, which is trying to blame you for the violence that occurred on January 6th, which even in the annals of ridiculous attacks, this one really takes the cake. So let's just focus on some facts. Let me ask you a question. What role did you occupy in the days immediately before January 6th?
Chief of Staff of the Department of Defense.
You were the Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense.
Yes, sir.
So to be clear, you were not rioting at the Capitol?
No, sir.
Where were you physically on January 6th?
In the Office of the Secretary of Defense in the Pentagon.
And what were you doing on that day?
On that day specifically, responding to preparing to mobilize and deploy the National Guard once we got the lawful request from the local governing authority, which was the mayor of D.C. and the Speaker of the House.
Now, how many days in advance were you working to prepare the Department of Defense to help secure the Capitol on January 6th?
Days in advance, Senator, we were in the Oval Office on an unrelated national security matter with the President of the United States, the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and myself. And the President authorized up to 20,000 plus National Guardsmen and women to secure any security measures necessary related to the Capitol. So we were moving to the fullest extent of the law before the requisite request came from a local governing authority days ahead of time.
And while you were Chief of Staff at DOD, how many times did DOD approach Capitol Police and ask if they needed National Guard assistance?
I believe those letters are well documented, numerous instances, and numerous of those instances, those requests were shut down.
Now, am I correct that the Capitol Sergeant at Arms said assistance was unnecessary?
That's correct, Senator.
Who did the Sergeant at Arms report to?
The Speaker of the House.
That would have been Nancy Pelosi at the time. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator.
And would that also be Chuck Schumer, then the Senate Majority Leader?
The Sergeant at Arms, yes, Senator, reports up there.
Did Mayor Bowser, the Democrat elected mayor in D.C., either request or allow National Guard assistance?
She put in writing on the days leading up to January 6th a declination for National Guard additional support. And that letter is available publicly to the world.
And just to speak English for folks at home, a declination meant she said no, don't send National Guard. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you a simple question, because from the questioning from my Democrat colleagues, they might think otherwise. Do you condemn violence against law enforcement?
All of it.
And by the way, is that true whether the violence is right-wing or left-wing or anywhere else?
There is no discriminating between types of violence against law enforcement.
And do you believe those who assault and commit violence against law enforcement should be prosecuted and should be sent to jail?
Especially those that kill them.
Let me ask you, how many years have you worked in public service?
About 16, Senator.
And how many years have you worked in particular in law enforcement and prosecution and national security?
Over a decade, Senator.
You know, I have to say it is ludicrous but sadly predictable that Democrats are endeavoring to tarnish you, to paint a false caricature based on innuendo and smoke. And so you're working to protect the Capitol on January 6th, and yet they're trying to blame you for the violence that occurred. Let me ask you this just as a straightforward matter. What is the job of the FBI, and what will the FBI's role be if and when you are confirmed as its director?
The simple motto on the website of the FBI's homepage is to protect American citizens and uphold the Constitution. If I am confirmed as the next director of the FBI, that's what we're going to do and redirect resources to making sure that occurs every single day.
Thank you for your willingness to do so, and this committee will hold you to account on restoring integrity at the FBI, and I thank you also for your commitment to transparency. I think that is incredibly important to bringing back integrity, and I'm grateful for it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lutnick, and thank you for that heartfelt opening statement. Your background is very impressive. Not only have you led several companies which are global leaders in financial services, real estate, and brokerage, you rebuilt Cantor Fitzgerald in the wake of the unspeakable tragedy of 9/11. I appreciate your willingness now to serve your nation. Let me start with just a general question. Why do you want to be the Secretary of Commerce?
I think America is in a place to teach the world and to show the world what leadership is like, what a great economy is like, what taking care of its Americans is like. And to be part of that administration, to be part of this historic Trump administration is one of the great honors of my life. So I'm just looking forward to being a part of this administration, to playing my part in helping drive our economy's growth and driving the support and dedication to our American people.
So in your business career, you've been very successful. You made a lot of money. You have told this committee in your questionnaire that you plan to divest your business interests in accordance with federal laws and regulations to avoid any conflict of interest. Can you explain what your plan is regarding your business interests and whether you will consult with the designated agency ethics officials?
So my plan is to only serve the American people. So I will divest, meaning I will sell all of my interests, all of my business interests, all of my assets, everything. I've worked together with the Office of Government Ethics, and we've reached agreement on how to do that, and I will be divesting within 90 days upon my confirmation. So I should have no business interest, therefore no conflicts of interest. I've made the decision that I've made enough money in my life. I can take care of myself. I can take care of my family. It is now my chance to serve the American people. And so upon confirmation, my businesses will be for sale, and someone else will lead them going forward. But the Office of Government Ethics and I have reached agreement. We've signed the document. I've made it public. And going forward, I will always consult. The Commerce Department has a great ethics department. I've already met with them, and I plan to stay in close contact with them and avoid all conflicts so I can just serve America.
Thank you for that. Let's move to one of the important responsibilities you'll have as Secretary of Commerce. The National Telecommunication and Information Administration, NTIA, is the lead agency for managing federal government spectrum, including critical mid-band spectrum. Over the past several years, Majority Leader Thune, Senator Blackburn, and I have all worked closely on a bill that would require NTIA to identify federal spectrum that can be more efficiently used, freeing up some of that spectrum for commercial users, to dominate in next-generation wireless technologies, 5G and 6G, to stay ahead of our adversaries and to advance strong economic growth. The U.S. must create a pipeline to expand commercial access to mid-band spectrum. Will you commit to working closely with myself, other members of this committee, on solutions that will expand commercial sector access to this key spectrum while at the same time protecting U.S. national security interests?
You got to ask me a tougher question than that. Absolutely, yes.
So tell this committee in your judgment. All right, let's try not a tougher one, but a natural follow-up. Why is freeing up more commercial spectrum important? Why should the American people care that we get this accomplished?
So we start by the NTIA is sort of the coordinator and the advisor to the administration on spectrum. There's enormous amounts of spectrum held by the Department of Defense, right? And for our country to really reach the scale that it can be, for it to be successful, we need to be the leader in the world of 5G and 6G. So we've got to work closely with the Department of Defense. As you said, we've got to make sure, of course, to protect ourselves. But with all due respect, if I'm going to be your Secretary of Commerce, I kind of lean towards commerce. So I'd like to try to help us drive some of that spectrum towards our businesses to free us to be the leader in spectrum in the world.
Well, thank you. I look forward to working with you on that. Let's turn to NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Last year, an activist judge in Maryland vacated NOAA's existing biological opinion for the then Gulf of Mexico. I would note that President Trump has renamed the Gulf. I have to say I'm partial to calling it the Gulf of Texas, but everyone can have their own opinion on that matter. NOAA must now file a new biological opinion on offshore work in the Gulf by May 21st. NOAA is notoriously slow-moving on these biological opinions. And if it fails to get this one done on time, it could shut down oil and gas operations in the Gulf. Can you commit to hold NOAA's feet to the fire to make sure that it meets the May 21st deadline for reissuing this biological opinion?
I will work hard to make sure they meet that deadline, and we do our job on time, rigorously, and thoughtfully, and we will, if I have anything to do with it, get it in.
And can you further commit that you will do everything to ensure that NOAA does not actively hamper energy production in the Gulf, such as by implementing unverified and unsafe vessel speed restrictions?
I can commit to that. I don't understand. I will study, of course, the work of NOAA, but the speed restrictions seem illogical to our fishermen and to our businesses, so they need to be studied, but you have to take care of Americans as well. That's sort of, how about we put that at the top of the list? Let's take care of Americans.
Thank you. Let me say to the three of you, thank you for agreeing to serve our nation. Thank you for going to the Department of Justice. I will note my Democrat colleagues who are suddenly deeply concerned about the rule of law all seem to have entered the witness protection program during the 4 years of the Biden presidency, when the Biden Department of Justice was the most lawless and partisan Department of Justice our nation has ever seen. And not a single Democrat on this committee could be bothered to be concerned in the slightest about the weaponization of the Department of Justice to attack President Biden's political opponents, about Merrick Garland's refusal to enforce the law, including refusing to protect Supreme Court justices when a clear federal statute made it a crime to protest and threaten the lives and families of Supreme Court justices, and yet the Biden Department of Justice refused to follow that law. Now, Mr. Sauer, I will note that you and I share a lot of legal history. We both attended the same law school. We both clerked for the same judge, Michael Ludig, on the Court of Appeals. You clerked for the late, great Justice Antonin Scalia. We both started our legal career practicing under Chuck Cooper, one of the finest Supreme Court litigators on the planet. You've been nominated to an incredibly important position, Solicitor General of the United States, a position frequently referred to as the 10th Justice. It is the only position in the entire federal government that is required by statute to be, quote, learned in the law. I will note I am grateful that is not a requirement to serve on the Senate Judiciary Committee. But I would ask you to share with this committee and share with the American people what is the responsibility of the Solicitor General, and how will you carry out this task if and when you are confirmed?
Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the opportunity to meet and discuss legal issues facing the United States. I believe I responded to earlier questions that the role of the Solicitor General is to defend both the statutes of the United States that are enacted by Congress and the executive actions of the executive branch. The Solicitor General does so on behalf of the client of the U.S. Department of Justice, which is the United States, the American people, and does so consistent with and with fidelity to the Constitution and the rule of law.
Well, thank you, and I have every confidence you will do exactly that. Mrs. Dillon, as a Sikh woman who immigrated to the United States at a young age, how has your background shaped your understanding of civil rights, and how can that perspective enhance the Civil Rights Division in advocating for all Americans from all backgrounds?
Thank you for that question, Senator. I would put it this way. My faith itself teaches, first, openness to all, respect for all, and protecting the defenseless. Those are among the tenets of the Sikh faith. And so that is why you see so many Sikhs volunteering in war-torn areas and doing relief work around the world. And so it's actually a tenet of our faith to contribute towards those efforts. So it's been my entire career that I have served in that capacity, motivated by my faith and my teachings in my home. And my career has also demonstrated many instances, as other senators have mentioned, of pro bono work, doing work for people who could not get a lawyer otherwise. And so I'm proud of that work. In the Civil Rights Division, there is a long and storied history of doing exactly the same thing, which is standing up for the most disadvantaged individuals in our United States and ensuring equal justice for all. And so I would definitely be informed by those lifetime experiences, including 32 years as a lawyer representing the underprivileged.
And let me ask you, how have your experiences as someone who's been subjected to racial profiling and abuse, and in particular the incident in 1995 when you and your husband were attacked on a bus, can you please briefly describe that and how that will inform how you will carry out the roles running the Civil Rights Division?
Well, thank you, Senator. In the early 90s, as a newlywed, I got a terrible phone call from the chaplain at NYU that my husband, who was a medical resident in that program, had been shot and brought to NYU. He'd been shot in the chest by a racist who confronted him on a crowded New York City bus during rush hour and told him to get out of his face and to apologize, and used numerous ethnic slurs. And when my then husband refused to apologize, he was shot. And so it really brought home to me that no matter what your education, your affluence, your background, there are instances in which bigots and racists will operate in society to try to harm people, and it is up to lawyers to then stand up to that and make sure that there are severe punishments. Unfortunately, that was New York City, and in that case, the person was not severely punished for shooting my then husband in the chest.
Wow, that's truly horrible. Mr. Reitz, I have one question for you. Will you tell this committee what the rule against perpetuities is?
If the chairman will grant me, I know that we're over time, if I may answer.
You may answer.
No interest is good unless it must vest, if at all, not later than 21 years after some life and being at the creation of the interest.
Very good. I want to enter into the record multiple letters in support of Mr. Reitz's nomination, a letter from the National Association of Police Organizations, a letter from former editorial board members of the Texas Review of Law and Politics, a letter from the MLK Association of Texas, a letter from the chairman of the Board of Regents at Texas Southern University, a letter from the Village in the Valley, and a letter from Pastor Willie Davis and Houston City Council members at Willie Davis. And without objection, these are all entered into the record. And Senator Welch, you are recognized.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rice, it was very nice to visit with you yesterday.
Before you're excused, Senator Blunt, I will say the ranking member asked if you also wore a pink tie to be in complete harmony.
Sort of pink.
Yeah.
Almost coordinated with the group. I'm impressed by the coordination of the group myself.
Well, thank you. All right, we'll start with questioning. As I noted in my opening statement, your extensive policy experience is impressive and makes you eminently qualified to lead NTIA. I appreciate your many years of public service, including your very hard work as a part of my team here on this committee. Why don't we start with this? Why do you want to be the Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Communications and Information?
Thank you, Senator. Expanding access to communications and technology is extremely meaningful work. It's lifted people out of poverty, it's fostered innovation, it's expanded opportunities for speech and information. NTIA has an incredible opportunity to deliver on these goals through through broadband, through spectrum, as well as through advising the president on internet policy. I am driven to ensure that NTIA succeeds in these missions.
As you noted, the NTIA is the lead agency for managing federal spectrum, including critical mid-band spectrum. Over the past several years, Majority Leader Thune, Senator Blackburn, and I have collaborated on a bill that would require NTIA to identify a clear pipeline of mid-band spectrum that can be used more efficiently and, following feasibility studies and established processes, allow for commercial use. To lead the world in 5G and 6G, to bolster our economy, and to ensure that it is America and not China that sets the technology standards of the future, we must expand commercial access to mid-band spectrum. Will you commit to working closely with me and with this committee to expand commercial sector access to spectrum while at the same time protecting U.S. national security interests?
Absolutely, Senator. National security needs to be paramount in any discussion over expanding access to spectrum. I'm optimistic that by working together, we have the brightest minds in the country. We can find a path forward to advance our international technology leadership while protecting national security.
As you know, President Trump has called for the United States to have its own Iron Dome missile defense system. The Defense Department says they need every ounce of spectrum that they currently occupy, and they cannot coexist with commercial users in their vast spectrum holdings, particularly if they need to build an Iron Dome system. What is your judgment? Can DoD build an Iron Dome and coexist with commercial spectrum users?
Thank you, Senator. First, at the outset, I thank God for the Iron Dome system. I have family in Israel, and it's saved their lives. So I would never do anything to jeopardize our ability to develop such a system here at home. And I am optimistic that by working together, we have some of the brightest minds of this country working on spectrum, working on feasibility studies, that we can find a way forward and have such a system at home without endangering national security.
As you know, NTIA administers the BEAD program, a $42 billion broadband deployment program authorized by Congress under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. During the last administration, NTIA saddled BEAD with a variety of extraneous and burdensome requirements. As a result, after nearly 4 years, not a single American household has been connected to the internet. In a departing screed to his colleagues, Biden's head of BEAD claimed that climate, labor, and other requirements, quote, were inserted by the prior administration for messaging political purposes and were never central to the mission of the program. I agree, they were never central to the mission. But it appears that the Biden mission was to avoid connecting even a single American household. To which I say, mission accomplished. That's over now. Will you commit to working closely with this committee to remove these extraneous requirements and refocus the BEAD program on its actual purpose, which is connecting Americans to broadband in a cost-effective and timely manner?
Yes, Senator. At the outset, I want the BEAD program to be a success. I want to connect every remaining American who currently lacks access to high-speed internet as expeditiously, efficiently, and effectively as possible. I believe that we can deliver on this goal, and I'm committed to it.
Now, some in the media, and some perhaps even in this room, want to convince the American people that fixing BEAD is part of some dark and sinister plot to benefit Elon Musk by opening up the program to Starlink. And I would put the former head of BEAD in that camp as well. Yet right-sizing BEAD may involve removing the thumb on the scale that the Biden administration placed in favor of fiber. And doing so is simply following the law as Congress wrote it. BEAD was written to be tech neutral. America's a big country. While fiber might make sense in some areas, hybrid fiber, fixed wireless, and yes, even satellite-based internet might be a smarter choice in other areas. That's not grift, it's good government. It's basic common sense. Americans have waited long enough to get connected. It's time to do it, and we must use every tool in the kit to get broadband deployed as quickly and efficiently as possible. Will you commit to overseeing the BEAD program with an eye towards deploying broadband without favor to any particular technology, individual, or company?
Absolutely, Senator. If I'm confirmed, my mission will be to deliver broadband to the American people, not to serve any individual or company.
Thank you. Ranking Member Cantwell.
I'm going to defer to my colleagues who have things.
Okay. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Ricketts. Next, I'll call on Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to all three of you. I will say the three of you all have had exceptionally successful business careers, and I appreciate your willingness to serve. I appreciate your willingness to go and represent the United States of America in three critically important countries. I appreciate your service to the country. Mr. Barrack, I want to start with you. As you know, the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants against Israeli officials, including Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, to punish Israel for its campaign against Hamas. Those warrants are disgraceful, they're illegitimate, and they're breathtakingly dangerous to America's national security interests. The warrants are disgraceful because Israel's war against Hamas is a legitimate campaign of self-defense in response to the October 7th terrorist attack. And I believe that our Israeli allies should not stop until they have utterly eradicated Hamas. They are illegitimate because Israel is not a member of the ICC, and the ICC has no jurisdiction over Israel. And they pose an acute threat to the safety and security of Americans because the precedent being set would allow the ICC to prosecute American officials and American troops who are likewise outside the court's jurisdiction. In response to this threat, President Trump issued an executive order. It reads, quote, "The United States expects our allies to oppose any ICC actions against the United States, Israel, or any other ally of the United States that has not consented to ICC jurisdiction." However, Turkey, and Erdogan in particular, have been active in boosting the ICC's campaign. Erdogan said, quote, "We support the arrest warrant." Erdogan met with the ICC prosecutor responsible for the warrants, Karim Khan, and expressed support for the ICC's attack against Israel. Erdogan's position puts both him and Turkey on a collision course with President Trump and with the United States. Please talk a little bit about how, if confirmed, you intend to approach this challenge.
Thank you, Senator. My first advice would not be the welcome wagon to Senator Erdogan, but it would be please don't get on a collision course with President Trump. That would not be a wise direction. My attitude and intention is simple. The practices and policies of the United States, of President Trump, of this body, are my GPS. I'm not a policy maker. I'm an executor of policy, and I would intend to, within the bounds of whatever diplomatic tools I have available, enforce that and make it clear that that is our position.
I think the executive order is an extremely important first step in countering the threats posed by the ICC. It allows the president to impose powerful sanctions against anyone who directly engages in the effort by the ICC to detain Americans or our allies who are not subject to ICC jurisdiction. Those sanctions were long overdue, and it's vital that they be enforced and widened. The prosecutor with whom Erdogan met has already been sanctioned. Last year, Turkish officials and lawyers sought to provide evidence to the ICC against Israel. One of those officials was a former Turkish lawmaker from Erdogan's party. Are you concerned that officials linked to Erdogan and the Turkish government are directly boosting the ICC's attack against Israel?
Senator, thanks for the rendition of facts that I'm actually not aware of in any classified format. My intent is try and get prepared to look forward on issues that are impending and that I'll have some ability to actually dissect and understand. So I can't really render an opinion on facts I don't have in front of me.
Well, I will follow up with you in writing and ask for more views. Mr. Fertitta, you talked in your opening statement about the economic opportunities between the United States and Italy and expanding those opportunities. Share your thoughts on the best opportunities for growth, for more trade and commerce between America and Italy.
Well, thank you, Senator, so much. There's 2,500 companies doing business in Italy from America. And we need to bring more companies over there, and we need to sell more goods to Italy. It's not only Italy that has wonderful products, but the United States of America does too. And so one of my huge goals is going to be to get even more companies over there and at the same time find a way for the companies that are doing business there to do even more business with the Italian government and the citizens of Italy.
Well, and I can personally attest that last night you were already doing your part with Senator Kelly and me and providing us both with some very fine Italian wine. So for the record, they do an excellent job of that.
Thank you, Senator Cruz.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Senator Scott.
Thank you to you both. Thank you to you both. All right, Mr. Isaacman, let's start. If you're confirmed, you will oversee NASA's various field centers, mission directorates, and affiliated activities. This includes Artemis and the Moon to Mars program, which aims to keep us one step ahead of nations like China in the fight for supremacy in space. The threat from China is very real. Just last week, General Saltzman, Chief of Space Operations for the Space Force, testified before the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission that Beijing has been explicit, as recently as October of last year, in stating that China intends to surpass the United States and become the world's preeminent space power. As General Saltzman put it, quote, China's advancement in space technology, their stated desire to dominate, and Beijing's disregard for international norms for the responsible use of space make them an incredible danger to U.S. prosperity and security. China has said that they will put a man on the moon by 2030, and that they will build a permanent lunar base there along with Russia by 2035. Based on how quickly they have already progressed, I think it is quite possible that China reaches those milestones sooner than those dates, and indeed that China reaches the moon before the end of President Trump's current term. Mr. Isaacman, if China beats us to the moon, what consequences might America face?
Mr. Chairman, I really appreciate that question, and I couldn't agree more with all of your commentary, sir, including in your opening remarks. We certainly cannot lose. If we do not lead the way and we're following, we may be following forever, and the consequence of which could be extraordinary. I mean, even if you're talking about things that have maybe even a low probability, let's say, for example, on the lunar surface, helium-3 becomes a new source of fusion power, it could shift the balance of power here on Earth. I don't think we can afford to find that out the hard way. As you said, sir, and I've agreed for a very long time, space is the ultimate high ground. We cannot afford to cede that ground.
So my team did a visual representation of what the stakes are. And it's a simple question: what does the future look like in 2030? Now, I will note that my team used ChatGPT to make this poster. And my immediate comment on seeing it is the American flag is too damn small. And I was told it was difficult to get a bigger American flag on AI. That may be underscoring the need to win the race for AI as well. But it does give a sense of exactly what the choices we're facing. Now, when we met in my office, you said beating China back to the moon was, quote, critical for our national interests. You also said that if President Trump turns on the television and sees Chinese astronauts on the surface of the moon before Americans, you said you would be fired that day. In your written testimony, however, you said, quote, we will prioritize sending American astronauts to Mars. There seems to be a bit of tension between the commitment you made in my office and your testimony. What is your view? Will you maintain course with the Artemis program so that we can return American astronauts to the moon before President Trump leaves office?
Mr. Chairman, I really appreciate the statement. First, I couldn't agree more with the president and his inspiring and ambitious goal to send American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on Mars. He didn't say we shouldn't go to the moon. I suspect the president, as I feel, and probably a lot of Americans, is what's taking us so long to get back to the moon, and why does it cost so much money? I absolutely want to see us return to the moon. As I mentioned in my prepared remarks, determine the economic, scientific, and national security value, while we are also proceeding towards Mars. I don't think we have to make any tough trades here, Senator. I think if we can concentrate our resources at the world's greatest space agency, we don't have to make a binary decision of Moon versus Mars, or Moon has to come first versus Mars. I think we could be paralleling these efforts and doing the near impossible, which is exactly why the American taxpayers funded NASA in the first place.
Well, I will say on the question of whether NASA has to implement Moon then Mars, United States law is explicit and unequivocal on that. 51 U.S.C. Section 20302, which Senator Cantwell and I wrote, says, vision for space exploration. The administrator shall establish a program to develop a sustained human presence in cislunar space or on the moon as a stepping stone to future exploration of Mars and other destinations. The notion of the moon as a stepping stone is explicitly in U.S. law. Do you acknowledge that?
Yes, I do, Senator.
And let me ask you, given the current NASA budget, if we assume for a moment we're not going to see a dramatic shift and NASA's budget double tomorrow, do you believe it is possible to stand up a full mission to the moon and a full mission to the Mars simultaneously?
Senator, as I mentioned in my prepared remarks, I think we can absolutely do that. We can figure out the space economy in low Earth orbit. We can run more scientific missions. This is the agency that went from sending Alan Shepard on a suborbital mission, and 8 years later, we saw Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the surface of the moon. Do I think that we can get back to the moon, chart a course for Mars, and do all the other things? Absolutely, Senator.
So do we have your commitment that you will not allow the scenario on the right on this poster to happen, that China will not beat us to the moon, that one of these heroes sitting in this room will set his or her, and as a father of 2 daughters, I'm particularly excited that Artemis is committed, it will be a her, the first woman will step foot on the moon, and she will be an American astronaut. Do we have your commitment that we will win the race to the moon and China will not beat us?
Senator, I only see the left-hand portion of that poster.
And next time we'll make the American flag bigger. Senator Cantwell.
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent that the poster be placed in the record.
An excellent idea, and a chairman who was crossing his T's and dotting his I's would have done so already, without objection. Senator Cantwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And continuing on this same point, listen, I have no doubt of your capabilities at the technical side of this and the expertise, both on the aviation and the space side. It's a question, I think, of a long-term challenge of different administrations to deliver.
Thank you. Mr. DeBar, there is reportedly a backlog of contracts awaiting approval at the Department of Commerce, with only 5 or 6 being approved per day. NOAA alone has 5,700 contracts set to expire this year. These contracts include everything from post-hurricane flood assessments to janitorial services. Recently, NOAA came close to letting the contract expire for the Advanced Weather Interactive Processing System. The system is critical for weather forecasters to access weather data from satellites, radar, surface stations, and computer models, and to issue weather warnings. More recently, a data center at Texas A&M was shut down for several days because of bottlenecks in the department's contracting process, depriving Texas emergency and water managers of critical drought forecasts that help them manage reservoirs and track storm surge data and hurricane forecasts in real time. There are other critical contracts for Texas that are in Commerce's contracting backlog, such as routine maintenance repairs to NOAA's aging Hurricane Hunter fleet. Can you commit to addressing the problems with the Department of Commerce contract process and resolving the backlog of contracts?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you. The Department of Commerce plays an underappreciated role in U.S. science policy, something you have a great deal of experience with, emphasizing applied science, technology transfer, and commercialization to drive economic growth. Given your experience managing national laboratories and advancing tech transfer at the Department of Energy, what lessons could the Commerce Department apply to better accelerate public-private partnerships and the commercialization of federally funded R&D?
So Senator, my kind of philosophy around federal government spending is it should be the equivalent of venture money. It should be the equivalent of triggering money to get the private sector moving in a certain direction. Certainly discovery science is a big part of it, but how do you translate it, as your question posed, is vitally important. So taking a look at the structure around Bayh-Dole and Weiler-Stevenson that actually makes that possible, but how do we make that easier? And also, how do we set up better communities for people to see what we've invented or supported invention, either in the private sector or in the universities? And how do we make it easier for people to go do that is certainly something I did at DOE and would look to push that forward at Commerce.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you in that regard. Finally, the United States has been a global leader in technological innovation due to our free enterprise system and strong rule of law. Our nation's leadership in critical emerging technologies like artificial intelligence will hinge on whether we embrace entrepreneurial freedom or instead adopt a European-style command and control regulatory scheme. You correctly recognize that the United States must continue to outpace China and remain the global leader in AI. What is at risk if we go the direction of Europe and the Biden administration and adopt heavy-handed AI regulations requiring prior approval before new innovations can be implemented?
So the AI sector, and you can't even say sector, but the AI applications are so darn broad. Everything from energy to agriculture to financial services, and I could keep going, is so wide that regulating something with that breadth and that width and people's ability to invent things across those and many other industries would impede economic progress and that whole sector and productivity for the whole economy and the welfare for everyday American citizens. So free enterprise and allowing everyone to develop across those and every other industry is vitally important for a broad set of reasons.
During the Biden administration, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, including the AI Safety Institute, looked at the worst of the European Union tech regulation, policing, quote, misinformation as a part of, quote, measuring AI and its, quote, risks. This was all nonsense. If confirmed, how will you restore NIST to its apolitical statutory mission and eliminate Trojan horse social policy?
So NIST has certain strengths that is clearly leader in the world, and one's on standards, one's on identifying the kind of the capabilities of certain technologies and measuring those. And so those, I think trying to have NIST stick to the traditional area that it does very well in versus expanding it into other areas, I think that's probably the right way to go for NIST in this particular area.
Terrific. So my final question is required of all nominees. If confirmed, do you pledge to work collaboratively with this committee to provide thorough and timely responses to the committee's requests and to appear before the committee when requested?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. I have letters of support from various organizations for Mr. DeBar's nomination, and I ask unanimous consent for them to be inserted in the hearing record without objection, so ordered. Senators will have until the close of business on Friday, May 2nd to submit questions for the record. The nominee will have until the close of business on Monday, May 5th to respond to those questions. So you'll have a busy weekend. That concludes today's hearing. The committee stands adjourned.
I'm happy to recognize you. They're really enjoying my lengthy questions. They've been praying you would arrive. The chair recognizes Senator Cruz.
I appreciate the always loquacious senator from Missouri, and I hope you did not have to resort to your own personal poetry to fill the time.
That was going to be next.
Well, then I apologize for depriving you of that particular joy. Let me start by welcoming today's nominees, Mr. Squires, Mr. Edlow, Mr. Geiser, Mr. Woodward. I am grateful that the President has nominated each of you to step into these critical roles at such a pivotal time for the Trump administration. Over the past several months, President Trump has governed with clarity, purpose, and boldness. He's issued executive orders to do what the American people demanded at the ballot box: eliminate crime in our streets, secure the southern border, and put the federal government firmly back on the side of law-abiding citizens. Under his leadership, the Department of Justice is no longer targeting political opponents. It is targeting violent criminals and criminal cartels. It's restoring order to a system that for years was being used to punish dissent and to reward lawlessness. Attorney General Pam Bondi is advancing that mission with energy and resolve. But make no mistake, the far left resistance is organized, lawless, and aggressive. Far left activist groups are flooding the courts in D.C., Boston, and San Francisco with lawsuits designed not to win on the law, but to block the president's agenda through judicial activism. And too many judges are going along with it. In just the last 4 months, more nationwide injunctions have been issued by lone district judges than in the entire 20th century. Let me repeat that. In 4 months, we have seen more nationwide injunctions than America had seen in the entire 20th century. That's not oversight, that's obstruction. That is activism. One plaintiff in one courtroom is now able to freeze federal policy for 340 million Americans. This is not justice. It's political sabotage from the bench. And it's happening because the left can't win at the ballot box. It turns out releasing murderers, rapists, and child molesters, releasing gang members is not a popular policy with the voters. But with left-wing radical judges, that's a different story. That's why your nominations matter. The administration needs serious, principled leaders, men and women who know the law, who have the backbone to carry it out in the face of political pressure. And the American people deserve a DOJ, a USCIS, and a USPTO that defends their rights, secures their communities, and follows the Constitution, not simply the edict of activist judges. Each of you has a critical role to play in that. Mr. Woodward, you've defended clients in some of the most politically charged cases in the country. If confirmed, how will you ensure that the DOJ's Civil Division resists political pressure, not just from the outside, but from within, and returns to equal enforcement of the law?
Senator, thank you for the question. Thank you also for the opportunity to meet in advance of this hearing. It's an important question, and I don't want my answer to be taken lightly, but I'm not at all intimidated by political pressure. As I have demonstrated through my career, people have taken issue with lots of the work that I have done. And for me, what's important is ensuring that the law is upheld, that the Constitution is respected. And I can assure you, Senator, that if confirmed, I will make sure that the Department of Justice does just that we root out the weaponization that has been so long embedded therein. We will find it, we will eliminate it, it will cease to exist.
You've seen firsthand how prosecutions can be weaponized. What safeguards do you intend to implement to prevent civil enforcement from becoming a political tool?
Senator, I appreciate that question. As counselor to the Attorney General, I'm already working with the Attorney General to build those safeguards in. There are hundreds and hundreds of cases that are litigated by the Department of Justice. We need to know what they are. We need to identify them. We need to be prepared to understand what the arguments are. I will work very closely with the deputies that have been confirmed by the Senate and that are acting in that capacity. We will find those cases. We will organize. One of the reasons I would be so blessed to come to the department is to help organize that litigation. It's something that I've done in the past at my law firm and at the law firm that I worked before that. I'm confident that I can do it if you give me the chance.
The Associate Attorney General oversees the Civil Division, civil rights, antitrust, and other major components. What is your top priority for restoring public trust in those divisions?
Senator, again, I hope I'm not making light of the question because the answer is easy. Follow the law.
Mr. Geiser, you clerked for 3 of the most respected constitutionalists in the federal judiciary, Judge Edith Jones, Judge Naomi Rao, and Justice Samuel Alito. All 3 are friends of mine. All 3 I respect deeply. How did those experiences shape your legal philosophy, particularly regarding the role of the executive branch in faithfully executing the law?
Well, thank you so much for that question, Senator Cruz. When you're a law clerk, your first task is to do your best to state the law in a way that the judge can use your work. And you're not the decider. You're there to do research, to provide your independent, candid, and honest view of the law. And should I be so fortunate to be confirmed as the Assistant Attorney General of the Office of Legal Counsel, that would be my primary aim, to always provide the best reading of the law and the best legal advice that I could give based on the questions that the Office of Legal Counsel receives.
Thank you. And Mr. Squires, the PTAB was created to improve patent quality and to provide a faster, cost-effective alternative to litigation. But in recent years, many small inventors and startups have expressed concern that it disproportionately favors large challengers and undermines the value of their patents, that is effectively an arm of big tech. What is your assessment of those concerns, and do you believe the system is functioning as Congress intended?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I think if you look at the data, the concerns are in plain sight. The IPRs themselves have a 68% defect rate, if you will. If the American patent system is a factory, 68% of the products we put out are found defective in a later proceeding. So the way to address it is to have patents, if I can harken back to my opening statement, born strong. We need to be able to incentivize getting the prior art in at the examination stage or closely thereafter, and having the improved quality, I think, will alleviate many concerns. There's also concern I have with IPRs that if, in fact, there is this prior art out there and validating patents at these great rates, is it or is it not getting back into the system in the examination on the front end so it can be applied when the applicants are asking for rights?
Okay, and a final question to Mr. Geiser and Mr. Woodward. I talked about the avalanche of nationwide injunctions we're seeing from individual district judges. How concerned are you about these nationwide injunctions, and what can be done to ensure that judges stay in their proper lane rather than trying to subvert the authority of the president and the will of the people who elected him? Mr. Geiser, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you, Senator Cruz. As Solicitor General of Ohio, I have the privilege of defending Ohio's laws against statewide injunctions that are sometimes sought. And I always make the same argument that courts are empowered to offer relief no broader than necessary or burdensome than necessary to redress the injury of those who are properly parties before the court. I think courts should follow that guidance, which the U.S. Supreme Court has long established and dates back all the way to the Anglo-American legal tradition in equity.
Mr. Woodward.
Senator, I am very, very concerned. It should not be the case that a president duly elected then has to convince 600 individual judges to enforce the policy prerogatives of that administration. This is a bipartisan problem. This is a problem that has persisted, as you observe, for some time now. It is a problem before the Supreme Court, and of course it is the policy of the Department of Justice not to comment on ongoing litigation. But candidly, it's a problem I'm not sure the Supreme Court will solve. You know, as I look in the Constitution, Article 3 doesn't seem to have any discussion of nationwide injunctions in it, and so it's a dubious one, to be sure. Let me be clear, however, is that it is not a problem I'm unafraid to face. If confirmed, we will take on all of the litigation in these courts. We will defend the president's prerogatives, and as a criminal defense attorney, I can tell you that I'm used to losing in the district court. We make our record, and that's why God invented the Court of Appeals.
Amen. Let me thank each of the nominees. Thank you for being here today. Written questions to the nominees may be submitted for the record until May 28th at 5 p.m. And with that, thank you, Mr. Bedford. As I mentioned in my opening statement, no FAA administrator has served the full 5-year term since Administrator Michael Huerta left in 2018. The past 2 Senate-confirmed administrators left early, requiring acting administrators to serve, including for nearly 18 months under the Biden administration. If confirmed, will you commit to providing the FAA with stable leadership and to serving the full 5-year term?
Mr. Chairman, I couldn't agree with you more that the inconsistency in leadership and the turnover that we've suffered over the last 25 years has to change, and I am committed to you, to this committee, to serving the full 5-year term.
Terrific, thank you. The commercial space launch industry is critical to our national space program, to national security and global competitiveness. In the last few years, we have seen a massive surge in the demand for FAA-licensed commercial space launches, with more than 200 launches per year expected in the near future, which will add considerable strain to the airspace system. Nearly every user of the National Airspace System pays something back into the system to help cover their operational costs. Yet under current law, space launch companies do not, and there is no mechanism for them to pay, even if they wish to. The reconciliation text that this committee released last week creates a phased-in approach for commercial space companies over a period of 10 years to begin paying a user fee on FAA-licensed launches and reentries. As commercial space flight expands rapidly, so does it impact on the FAA's ability to operate the National Airspace System. This proposal accounts for that. Provided that there is an on-ramp, should commercial space companies pay to offset some of these costs?
Thank you for the question, Chairman Cruz. I certainly don't want to get ahead of the administration and on policy issues, but I will confirm you're exactly right. Airline users, passengers, and airlines themselves pay significant taxes, and as I said in my opening statement, those taxes are designed to modernize our NAS. And one of the things that is absolutely critical in modernization is making sure we design a NAS that it can accommodate an increased cadence in space launch. So I certainly support where you're going with that.
Thank you. Last week, President Trump issued executive orders to advance the integration of new aviation technology, such as drones, air taxis, and commercial supersonic aircraft into the airspace. I have long advocated for the FAA to take steps to move these technologies forward, including in last year's FAA reauthorization by creating the Center for Advanced Aviation Technologies. Secretary Duffy recently selected a consortium led by Texas A&M to manage the center in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, with testing corridors located throughout Texas. Will you commit to leveraging existing resources at the FAA, including the Center for Advanced Aviation Technologies, to implement President Trump's recently issued executive orders?
Well, despite my connections as an alumni of Florida State University, I would be more than happy to work with the folks at Texas A&M. I think research and design is critical. Technologies are moving at light speed now, and what we can't allow is for the FAA to hold it up. We need to be part of the innovation and not part of the problem.
Thank you. In January, as we all know, an Army Black Hawk helicopter conducting a nighttime training flight collided with American Airlines Flight 5342, which was on final approach to DCA. All 67 passengers and crew on board both aircraft were killed. In the months since the crash, we have learned more about the poor design of the airspace that created a, quote, intolerable risk to aviation safety, according to the NTSB. Republic Airways is one of the top regional carriers at DCA, and indeed had a flight involved in a go-around involving military aircraft earlier this year. If confirmed, what actions would you take specifically to improve the coordination between the military and the FAA, especially around DCA?
Thank you for the question, Chairman Cruz. First, I'd like to congratulate both yourself and Ranking Member Cantwell on your recent introduction of legislation to demand the investigation from both the Army IG as well as the Inspector General. We need to shine a light on this. Transparency is going to help us find permanent solutions in terms of how we're managing the NAS. You're correct. At Republic Airways, we operate almost 150 movements a day. Here at Reagan National, we've had multiple, resolution advisories, 3, frankly, since the 29th of January. So the problems persist, and more work needs to be done.
In May, Secretary Duffy announced his plan to modernize the air traffic system. This committee will provide the FAA with over $12 billion for the most urgently needed improvements, such as replacing the outdated telecommunications infrastructure that broke down and has caused persistent issues at Newark International Airport. What specific accountability mechanisms would you implement to ensure that the FAA is successful in this modernization effort? And additionally, how would you track and verify that real progress is being made?
Well, thank you for the question, Chairman Cruz. I think in all of our office visits, and we talked about this, the accountability is going to be top of mind. And if confirmed, I will be the Chief Accountability Officer here. On the one hand, I could tell you we have an opportunity to bring commercial practices into the FAA in terms of how we run a competition using American manufacturers to take technology that exists today, not moonshot technology, but things that we're installing in Dubai today, making Dubai the world-class aviation system. That technology needs to be deployed here, and it needs to be deployed now. So I hope we can work on a bipartisan way. We'll develop the plan, the strategy to execute it. We'll develop the project management plan with clear lines of sight on the deliverables and the commitments that we will contractually demand of our commercial partners in installing the NAS. I will say this, just as an area of concern that I've had through my diligence in this process, our procurement process needs to change. We need to think more commercially. The men and women at the FAA are telling me that if we run the normal commercial process, we're going to be 3 years before we see anything showing up in the airspace. And I think in deference to the families that are with us today, we owe it to them to move quicker.
I fully agree with that, and thank you for your leadership and willingness to serve. Thanks. With that, I recognize Ranking Member Cantwell.
Thank you. Mr. Bedford.
And I think robes would look damn fine on you. Welcome, Mr. Bovee. Congratulations on your nomination. Your record is exceptional, prosecuting terrorists and spies and cyber criminals and major traffickers. You've dedicated your career to protecting the American people and upholding the rule of law. Your nomination reflects exactly what our judiciary needs: serious, experienced, rule of law-oriented individuals who understand the limited role of the courts in our constitutional system. You are President Trump's second appellate court nominee in this second term. You and Ms. Hermendorfer, President Trump's first appellate nominee, share the distinction of being tapped to fill appellate seats that remained vacant, not because of delay or inaction, but because President Biden's nominees were simply too extreme for the Senate to confirm them. In your case, the seat had previously been offered to Adil Manji, a nominee whose radical affiliations made clear that he was unfit for the federal bench. Manji was tied to a law center that hosted terrorists, that promoted anti-Semitic rhetoric, and that attacked, repeatedly, law enforcement. When given the opportunity to repudiate those views, he declined. His nomination failed, and rightly so. Now, rather than own that failure, Democrats are reaching for innuendo, rumor, and political theater. They're trying to paint mainstream Trump nominees as quote-unquote controversial to distract from the fact that their own nominees were so out of step with basic standards of judicial temperament and constitutional fidelity. The contrast is obvious. President Trump is restoring normalcy to the judiciary, nominating judges who will apply the law, who will respect the Constitution, who understand that justice is not a tool for activism. That's especially true and important at the appellate level. Circuit judges serve as a critical check on activist district judges who seek to override national policy and impose their own ideological will. They also stand as a safeguard against prosecutors who are willing to politicize justice. I will say I find myself amused listening to my Democrat colleagues as they clutch their pearls in utter horror that the Department of Justice is deporting violent criminal illegal aliens. Oh my goodness, murderers, rapists, child molesters, Venezuelan gang members, how dare you remove them from America? Don't you know that wife-beating gang members are appropriate to have daiquiris with in El Salvador? Don't you know that America-hating anti-Semites you should dance in celebration with, come back to our campuses and terrorize our Jewish students? That's what the Democrats on this committee stand for. More criminals, more murderers, more rapists, more child molesters, and more Venezuelan gang members. Democrats on this committee got up on their high horse that the MS-13 gang member deported to El Salvador must come back to America. Well, you know what he did? And he's being prosecuted for human trafficking. I've read every word of the indictment. 10 years of human trafficking with MS-13. This is the poster child for who the Democrats want more of in the United States of America. And somehow, you're the villain because you are a real prosecutor willing to enforce the law and remove dangerous criminals from being in a position to threaten American citizens. Let me say on behalf of 31 million people in Texas, thank you. Thank you for answering the call. Thank you for stepping forward and fighting to keep American citizens safe. Let me ask you, in your view, if you're confirmed as a judge, what is the importance of the Constitution and what is the importance of the rule of law?
Singularly important. The Constitution defines the mechanism for the entire republic. Adherence to it could not be more important. Article 3 and its restraints would guide me in the exercise of judicial power, and I would do everything that I could to enforce the Constitution faithfully based on the rule of law.
So I commend you for that answer. I also commend you for knowing what Article 3 is. I'll point out that President Biden nominated to be an Article 3 judge an individual who did not know what Article 5 of the Constitution was, and stunningly did not know what Article 2 was either. I will say in the annals of unqualified judicial nominees, the Biden administration managed to take the gold, and it is refreshing to have someone who is actually qualified nominated to the court. Thank you.
Madam Chair, before we recess, may I make
Senator
a parliamentary inquiry?
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Rosen. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Walker, I'm extremely alarmed by China's encroachment across the Western Hemisphere. Just a couple of weeks ago, I traveled to El Salvador, Panama, and Mexico, and met with leaders who all echoed the same concern. This is dangerous, and it is the result of bipartisan failure stretching back decades. As you noted in your testimony, we've had no Senate-confirmed ambassador to the Bahamas since 2011, under both Republican and Democrat administrations. That's left an enormous vacuum, allowing China to make inroads in the Bahamas for over a decade, pouring billions into a deep-water port and other critical sectors of the economy. The Bahamas is just 50 miles off the coast of Florida and serves as a key regional gateway. The proximity makes any major foreign investment or infrastructure project directly relevant to American national security. The United States should work with our partners to curtail China's growing influence in the Caribbean and the broader Western Hemisphere, and your role will be vital in advancing this critical partnership. What policy approaches, in your judgment, should we pursue to help the Bahamas resist Chinese pressure?
Well, thank you for your question, Senator. First of all, I can't set policy, and it is set by the president. But what I see China doing now is they're doing a lot of influence in the Caribbean. And one of the things that I feel that I would do to get China to is continue to work with the Bahamian people to make sure that we become the partner of choice, being so close because of being 50 miles of proximity from the United States. just to work with the Bahamian people and the Bahamian government to make sure that we become the partner of choice. And at the same time, work with a lot of the American companies to come to the Bahamas to see the key investments that they can make down in the Bahamas to combat against China, because I think they are coming down with a lot of money. And so if we can get other American companies to come down to invest as well in the Bahamas, that'll be a very key, that'll be a starting point.
Fully agree. Thank you. Mr. Gore, congratulations. Good to see you. You and I go back a long, long time. Indeed, just the other day, we were laughing at 13 years ago when a former colleague of ours, John McCain, labeled your then boss, Rand Paul, and Mike Lee and me collectively wacko birds. And as you know, although I couldn't find it, I have a baseball cap in my office given to me by a grassroots supporter with Daffy Duck labeled wacko bird. And I remain a proud wacko bird. I feel pretty confident Senator Lee and Senator Paul do as well. You're going to be terrific in India. India, as you know, is quite literally on the front line against Chinese expansion. The U.S. and India are both acutely threatened by Chinese expansionism. President Trump and Modi undeniably respect each other and have signaled again and again that the United States and India are natural allies. Nevertheless, our relationship with India is far from perfect. You've talked about that in several different ways today in your testimony in response to questions. I'd like to ask you to talk a little more specifically about how India views Chinese expansionism and aggression and what that means for U.S.-Indian relations.
Senator, thank you for the question. Look, India is very concerned. I mean, they've openly spoken about this, as I think it was Senator Haggerty who pointed out just 5 years ago, they were in open conflict. And so while we might have our moment of hiccups right now, we are on the track of resolving that. Our relationship with the Indian government, with the people of India, extends many more decades, and it's a much warmer relationship than they have with the Chinese. Frankly, they are concerned by Chinese expansionism. And Chinese expansionism is not just on the border of India, it's all over the area. And so we share a lot in common, and we share a lot of the same concerns that other nations in the region do. So should I be confirmed, we will make that a top priority, that India is pulled into our side and away from them.
I fully agree. Another area that remains under-discussed is cooperation with India, specifically on energy. India has the world's largest population, a booming economy, and it's on track to become the world's largest economy in future years. President Trump is committed to American energy dominance, and obviously my home state of Texas is a powerhouse when it comes to energy. Talk a little bit about the possibilities for U.S.-India energy cooperation.
Look, possibilities are endless, Senator, as you pointed out. We fully intend in these trade talks that are ongoing right now to open the markets to crude oil, petroleum products, liquefied natural gas. You're talking about a population of 1.4 billion individuals there. Their middle class, by our definition, is larger than the entire United States of America. And so we have countless possibilities to expand into those markets, and we fully intend to do that.
Excellent.
Thank you, Senator.
I think very, very cogent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Tableson, let me first of all say nice job dancing with both Senator Hawley and Senator Kennedy. They can be challenging questioners, and you acquitted yourself ably.
Thank you.
For both of them.
Thank you.
By the way, Kennedy did show some mercy not quizzing you on obscure Latin maxims, so I'm disappointed, frankly, because that's one of the things I enjoy most about these hearings.
Res ipsa.
The thing speaks for itself.
You began your career clerking for two Supreme Court justices, Brett Kavanaugh when he was on the D.C. Circuit, and then Justice Scalia. What did you learn about judging and approaching the law from both justices?
From Justice Scalia, I learned to be fearless in your intellectual commitments. You know, when you've thought about something deeply and have written about it, you've made a sort of intellectual commitment to an area of law, you follow that commitment wherever it goes. But at the same time, to maintain deep civility and collegiality with your colleagues, even those with whom you disagree, as Justice Scalia did. I also learned from Justice Scalia that it's possible to balance a full life in the law with a very full life at home. He had that huge family and really great friends, and he really lived life fully, and I hope to emulate that. From Justice Kavanaugh, I learned that you can never be too careful. It's always worth the time to go back and read one more case, to reread your opinion one more time, to make sure that you've picked every single one of your law clerk's brains, because the work is profoundly important, and we serve the public by writing opinions that have to last and that have to work in different factual scenarios. And from both justices, I learned, they are both so learned in the law, but managed to maintain a persistent sort of intellectual curiosity about the law. If there was a new law review article, they would read it. And they were always sort of interested in intellectual debates about corners of the law that they hadn't yet explored. And I think that curiosity and open-mindedness really serves a federal judge well, because it keeps you, open and also excited about your work.
So you have a very impressive legal career. You managed to overcome the enormous impediment of graduating from Yale, not once but twice. I will say, though, your nomination has attracted quite a bit of interest. I have had people reach out to me on this nomination more than any other judicial nomination in the second Trump term, both from critics and from multiple conservatives who I respect deeply and who know you well and have vouched for you energetically. As Senator Durbin noted, 55 conservative groups signed a letter opposing your nomination. And they raised concerns that I think boiled down to a concern that you're secretly a closet liberal and that you'd be an activist on the bench. I want to give you an opportunity to respond to those concerns however you would like.
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator. Let me say, I guess, two things. First, I was raised by a very conservative law professor sitting right there. And, it has stuck. We were actually, I went to a Jewish day school, and I think it felt like we were the only conservatives at our Jewish day school in the 1990s. Especially back then, if you were Jewish and conservative, you had to really mean it. And we did. And my parents raised us to be proud of those beliefs and to be proud of those differences. I think my service in the United States government has been fully consistent with those values. I have obviously been a prosecutor fighting violent crime. I have prosecuted human traffickers, meth traffickers, international opioid dealers, corrupt city employees, armed robbers, carjackers. I think that work is consistent with my values. We also, turned our lives upside down to move to DC with 2 3-year-olds and an infant, so I could serve in the Solicitor General's office in 2019. And in that job, I did work that I'm very proud of, and it was consistent with my conservative values. The second thing, I guess I'll address, Senator, is I know that a lot of the concerns are about my husband. And it is true that my husband and I don't agree about everything in politics or the law. But my husband and I do agree about what it turns out are more important things in day-to-day life. We agree about devotion to our children, our religious faith, love of this country, devotion to public service, deep relationships in our local community, and that is the stuff of day-to-day life. And I was raised in the best tradition of Charlie Kirk, to relish debate, prove me wrong. And so we do have, law and policy debates, but it works for us because we have so much else in common. And although I'm quite certain my husband is wrong on many matters of policy and law, I love him very deeply, and we have a wonderful family life.
If you're anything like my wife, you're quite certain your husband is wrong on every issue that he disagrees with you on. And you're probably right. That was a very impressive answer. And I will say one thing that I find particularly impressive is Justice Kavanaugh's nomination before this body was incredibly contentious. And I think you showed a lot of courage standing up and defending your former boss. And I think that speaks to character. And I don't know if you care to explain why you chose to come forward and put your own credibility on the line to defend Justice Kavanaugh.
Absolutely, Senator. You know what? It wasn't hard, because everything that was being said about Justice Kavanaugh was fundamentally inconsistent with a man who I knew very well. I've known him very well for 15 years now. We worked very closely together, and I know that he is a good man. And those allegations were so fantastical to me that it was not hard to raise my hand and tell the truth about the man that I knew, and I would do that again 100 times out of 100.
Thank you.
Senator Schmidt. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. Congratulations.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Cruz, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ghalib, I am concerned that your stated public positions are markedly in conflict with the views of President Trump and with the positions of the United States. So I want to spend some time talking about your views. Let's talk first about boycott, divestment, and sanctions of Israel. During your tenure as mayor, the Hamtramck City Council passed a resolution supporting the boycott of Israel, divestment from Israel, and sanctions of Israel. Do you support boycotting Israel?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. So, as a mayor, my position is an honorary position, and it's a city manager system in our government, city government. So, the Jewish Voice for Peace group drafted that resolution, came and convinced the city council to unanimously vote for that.
So you voted for it?
I didn't vote for it because I only vote if there's a tie. So it wasn't my idea, it wasn't my initiative. It was the Jewish Voice group.
Did you support it at the time?
I didn't support it. I didn't vote for it.
Did
it wasn't
you
my
oppose it?
idea.
Did you oppose it?
I didn't have to vote at the time. So
Do you support boycotting Israel right now?
Senator, we don't have any companies that deal with Israel in our city.
Okay, with respect, you're not answering my question.
I don't.
As a policy matter, do you support BDS? Do you support boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning? Under your leadership, the city you were leading became the first American city in the whole country to pass a BDS resolution. And I'm asking if you support the policy that you put in place.
I didn't put it in place, and I don't support it, but it was, like I said, drafted
So your testimony here today is you do not support BDS, you do not support boycotting Israel, divesting from Israel, or sanctioning Israel.
Yes, sir. It was drafted by a Jewish attorney, voted unanimously by the city council.
All right, let's move then to the Abraham Accords. In August of 2020, you posted harsh criticism of President Trump's push to normalize relations between Israel and the UAE. You said that it was a threat to stability and a cause for mourning. Do you continue to oppose the Abraham Accords?
I don't recall writing that, Senator, but at the time, as you know, I was opposed to the president. Up until 2024, I was still not a supporter of President Trump until...
So you opposed President Trump. My question is, do you oppose the Abraham Accords?
No, Senator. I think there's a great opportunity at this time to have a growing momentum and to move with the President Trump peace plan. And there's a great opportunity that we can treat everybody fairly and accomplish regional stability, a long-term, everlasting peace, and get everybody involved in this.
So in this same post, you described Saddam Hussein as a martyr. Do you continue to believe Saddam Hussein was a martyr?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. This is the third time I'm asked. And as I said, I was a private citizen in 2020.
I'm just asking your views.
Yes, thank you. I will clarify that. It was the day of January 7, 2020, when our military bases were attacked by Iran. and in a moment of anger because we didn't respond.
So I asked you about today. Do you continue to believe Saddam Hussein was a martyr today?
Senator, I don't think that, no doubt that Saddam was a dictator. And I said it earlier, if this offended anybody who suffered from Saddam, who lost a loved one, I apologize about that.
Okay, so you're not answering my question. Do you believe today that Saddam Hussein was a martyr? That's a yes or no.
I mean, I can say no. It wouldn't matter. He's in God's hand. He will get the treatment he deserves. I'm not.
All right, in August of 2020, you posted that the Muslim Brotherhood was an inspiration. Do you continue to believe the Muslim Brotherhood is an inspiration?
Thank you, Senator. I think a lot of my posts were written in Arabic and mistranslated. I believe that, you know, it's an ideology. It's not just a group of people. I disagree with a lot of things that they do. Some of them are extremists. Some of them are part of some governments in the Middle East. So I trust our government to do the research and
Okay, again, my question was simple and straightforward. Do you continue to believe the Muslim Brotherhood is an inspiration?
No, I'm not part of it. I don't believe in that. But if
Okay,
anybody
but you did post it in 2020. Let me ask you, how would you be able to serve as an ambassador if President Trump designates the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization? I have legislation to do that. I believe it is likely the Trump administration will designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine.
I would trust the president, and if it's designated, I will be committed to implement President Trump's policies. I'm not, you know, I trust the president's policy, and if confirmed, I will be implementing the policies of the administration. I mean, I wouldn't go against the president and his policies.
Mr. Ghalib, I will say, from your long-standing public positions, it appears you have a deep-felt and passionate view about the Middle East, but it is a view that is in direct conflict with the policy positions of President Trump and this administration. I will point out also that, and you've been asked about this before, but it is really quite astonishing, that on Facebook, you liked a post that called Jews monkeys for their own benefit.
Thank you, Senator.
Why would you like a post that calls Jews monkeys?
Thank you. I explained that earlier. From 2010 to 2000, before I became the mayor, I used to have a bad habit of acknowledging every post, every comment under my post. Doesn't mean that I agree with it, just acknowledging. But there were a response under that was not translated or interpreted that says you can say this in your country but not in this country, which means that I did not agree with that post, even though I acknowledge it. I know it was a bad habit, but let me be clear. I don't agree with that statement, and I treat everybody with respect in my official capacity.
And let's be clear, the statement that you liked said they are all monkeys for their own benefit. So every Jew is a monkey.
I don't agree with that statement, Senator. And the person who wrote it is mentally challenged in our community. He is well known. I used to have this idea of inclusivity in my past, ideology. I changed in 2024. I changed even my party,
Mr. Ghalib, there may well be positions within the Trump administration that you are qualified to perform in that are unrelated to these issues that you have such passionate beliefs about. I believe your beliefs are sincere. I believe that when you became the mayor of the first city in America to pass a BDS resolution, it's because you believe in BDS. I disagree with you on that. That is contrary to the policy of the United States government, but you're entitled to have your own views.
But
what I do not understand is how you could possibly serve as a United States ambassador for President Trump in the Middle East when you have passionate views, including having been a vocal opponent of the Abraham Accords, the singular and most consequential accomplishment President Trump has negotiated, and your longstanding views are to publicly oppose the Abraham Accord.
Thank you, Senator. Let me be clear. I support the Abraham Accord, and I think there's a golden opportunity to get everybody involved in that. And let me be clear, in February of 2022, as the mayor, the first thing I did is to pass a resolution to condemn anti-Semitism. It's documented. That's what I perform in my official capacity. The other things, people are making assumptions based, trying to judge my intention.
I'm curious, would a statement like all Jews are monkeys, would that qualify as anti-Semitism?
Well, that's, somebody wrote it who's mentally challenged.
Now, my question is, does the statement all Jews are monkeys, does that qualify as anti-Semitism?
I don't agree with it, Senator.
Okay, you're not answering my question.
It's definitely anti-Semitism, but clicking on it doesn't mean I endorse it. It's
Well,
just
actually,
acknowledging
like
reading.
means exactly that. When you like something, it means you
No,
like
Senator,
something.
every post since 2010, every comment, because I used to have like 10, 20 comments, I used to acknowledge it, to read it, but sometimes I would respond under it to oppose it. And there was a response here that wasn't translated by the media that says, you cannot say this in your country. It wasn't translated. And when I met
But
with
that's
Senator...
not disagreeing with the statement that all Jews are monkeys.
But let me be clear now, I disagree with that, and
But you didn't at the time.
you are making assumptions, sir.
No, I'm asking. I'm not making an assumption. That's a
No, I
question.
did disagree at the time, and I still disagree.
Did you disagree publicly? Did you say a word of disagreement, or was your only public statement a like, which is the universal method of saying you like something and agree with it?
Everybody who asked me, I told them it doesn't mean I endorse it. It's just acknowledging reading it, but I am opposing that, and I make it clear now. I passed a resolution to condemn anti-Semitism in all forms or shape.
So, you mentioned earlier that the posts were in Arabic and they haven't been translated right. I have in my hands right now one of those Arabic posts on August 13th, 2020, and I have the English translation. Among other things, you talk about individuals who died in Egyptian prisons, and you said, quote, "They die to be etched on the pages of history, stained in positions that inspire generations and make millions of Brotherhood fans exposed to a global demonic campaign and unprecedented demonic media infliction. I have only seen such situations in the martyr Saddam Hussein and his companions. May God have mercy on them."
Thank you, Senator, for that question. I was talking about standing firm for the cause of a person. Doesn't mean I agree with him. I am a strong advocate of democracy in the Middle East. Yes, I was against the military coup, and I believe in democracy. That's the best value that we have, and we want everybody to enjoy that value in the Middle East. So I was advocating for democracy in the Middle East. Doesn't mean that I support certain group, but I support democracy. And
well, as I said, I think your longstanding views are directly contrary to the views and positions of President Trump and to the position of the United States. I, for one, am not going to be able to support your confirmation. And I want to enter into the record this post in both the Arabic and English translation. I ask that it be entered into the record.
It'll be entered into the record without objection.
Look, I think the facts here are quite clear, and your longstanding position is directly contrary to that of the President's.
Senator, if confirmed, I will be implementing President Trump's policies with no objections. Thank you.